Welcome to the RPG Players Guild. My name is Gordon Jackson. We're going to be talking about races today. The app I'm going to be using here throughout this series of videos is the 5e character app put out by Dungeon Developer, available at the Google Play Store. This app is really good. It has every class, every race, every background, and all the feats that are available in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. You can manage sources when you first get it and download every source book that's in the game so that you have access to all of it in one spot. If your dungeon master just wants to play through the player's handbook, you can select player's handbook only, and you're only going to be looking at races for the player's handbook. Same thing with classes. You're only going to be looking at classes that are available in the standard edition. If your DM wants to play Eberron's Rising from the Last War, and that's the campaign you're going to be playing, and that's where all of your adventures are going to be at, you can come in and all you're going to find is the stuff that's available through that source book. Very good app. So let's get started. All right, let's talk about Dragonborn. So if you're thinking about running a Dragonborn character, this is the race that you're looking at for your next character. Let's take a look at the stats, and then we'll talk a little bit about the culture itself. So there's 3 types of Dragonborn that you can play, 1 from the player's handbook and 2 from Wildmount. Straight up Dragonborns get a +2 strength, +1 charisma. If your DM is allowing Tasha's optional rolls, you can put a +2 somewhere and a +1 somewhere. Your size is going to be medium. Speed's 30 feet. Age of a dragon, they grow very quickly. They can walk within hours after hatching and attain a size and development of a 10-year-old human child by the age of 3 and reach adulthood by 15. They live to be around 80. Alignment Dragonborn tend to extremes, making a conscious choice for one side or the other of the cosmic war between good and evil, represented by Bahamut or Tiamat, respectively. Most Dragonborn are good, but those who side with Tiamat can be terrible villains. So when we talk about, if you don't know a lot about dragon lore, just a real quick lesson here. So Bahamut is a platinum dragon, metallic, and Tiamat is a chromatic dragon. She's the god of chromatic dragons. Chromatic dragons typically in the game are evil, and metallic dragons in the game are typically on the good side. Now, in culture-wise, the Dragonborn have separated themselves from, they fought wars for years, they were enslaved, they fought wars for years for dragons, and they have broken away from that, and they do not, in the cultures, they don't follow dragons anymore. They don't have that war going on between chromatics and metallics. They have integrated and they have moved beyond the problems that the dragons have. To say that chromatic dragons and metallic dragons have issues with each other would be a huge understatement, and the Dragonborn have not carried that over into their society. They've moved beyond that stuff. Size, Dragonborn are taller and heavier than humans, standing well over 6 feet tall and averaging almost 250 pounds. Your size is medium. Draconic Ancestry. You have Draconic Ancestry. Choose one type of dragon from the Draconic Ancestry table below. Your breath weapon and damage resistance are determined by the dragon type, as shown in this table. So one thing about Dragonborn are pretty consistent over the millennium of crossbreeding within the clans and within their society. Most of them have a fairly uniform appearance, where they're going to be the bronzes, brass, copperish type color. But some Dragonborn may be more in line with their Draconic ancestry. So it would be on the rare side, but it wouldn't be surprising to find a Dragonborn that had black scales or blue scales or gold scales, that more closely associated with their Draconic ancestry. So depending on your Draconic ancestry, you're going to get a damage type and a breath weapon. And you can get acid, lightning, fire, poison, or cold. And that breath weapon is going to have an area effect depending on what your Draconic ancestry is. So with this breath weapon, you can use your action to exhale destructive energy. Your Draconic ancestry determines the size, shape, and damage types of the exhalation. When you use your breath weapon, each creature in the area of exhalation must make a savings throw, the type of which is determined by your Draconic ancestry. The DC for this savings throw equals 8 plus your Constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus. A creature takes 2d6 damage on a failed save and half as much damage on a successful one. The damage increases by 3d6 at 6th level, 4d6 at 11th level, and 5d6 at 16th level. After you use your breath weapon, you can't use it again until you complete a short or a long rest. It seems funny to me that they tie this to level where the damage goes up. So you think it would be more like an age thing. Obviously, we're not going to, the way that the game works, we're not going to follow the age stuff. But looking and doing research on Dragonborn, one of the big complaints with people is this breath weapon. In my mind, it seems like as you got older, you may be able to use it more a day as opposed to getting more damage from it. But this is the way that it works in the game. So it is pretty cool, though, that you do have a weapon. And they're going to take damage from it. It may be half damage, but you're going to be able to damage. And it's one of those things where you may use it at that opportune moment where you can get your opponents in a line or within that cone, and you may be able to damage several opponents at the same time. The cool thing about the standard Dragonborn is that you have resistance to the damage type associated with your Draconic Ancestry. You're also going to be able to speak, read, and write Common and Draconic. And being able to speak, read, and write Draconic is a pretty big deal. Draconic is thought to be one of the oldest languages and is often used in the study of magic. Depending on which histories you read, Draconic may be the oldest language. And it could be a toss-up between it and Giant. The language sounds harsh to most other creatures and includes numerous hard consonants and sibilants. So we have two varieties of Dragonborn, and these two have a history with each other. So the Dragon blood, or Dracon blood, and the Ravenites come from Wildmount, and in the past, they worked together. And at a certain point, the Dracon blood enslaved the Ravenites. And then a bunch of dragons came and destroyed the city. And at that point, the Ravenites took advantage of that situation and broke free from their slavery. So if you're playing one of these two types and you run into the other one, there could be issues. Especially because the Dracon blood, there are other races and other groups that are out there that they're not super popular. So, and you can tell a Dracon blood is because they have a tail. They're the only one of the Dragonborns that have a tail. So anytime you see a Dragonborn with a tail, they are a Dracon blood. And so just be aware that if that's what you want to play as a character, that your DM could throw out some stuff because there is going to be some racial issues with the Dragonborn and Dracon blood because they have enslaved the other portion of their race. You're going to get a +2 in intelligence or a +1 in charisma. And once again, if you're using Tasha's, you can put those where you'd like. One of the things you'll get with Dracon blood is you're going to get dark vision. So you'll be able to see in dim light within 60 feet as if you were in bright light, and in darkness as if you were in dim light. You cannot discern colors in darkness, only shades of gray. So the Dracon blood are also going to get forceful presence. You can use your understanding of creative diplomacy or intimidation to guide a conversation in your favor. When you make a charisma, intimidation, or persuasion check, you can do so with advantage. Once you use this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a short or a long rest. You're going to get the same Draconic Ancestry breath weapon with all three of these races. You're going to get the same weapon. The one difference that you're going to get with the Ravenites and the Dracon blood is you're not going to get the damage resistance, and you're also not going to pick up being able to speak Draconic. Now, if you're a Ravenite, you're going to get a +2 in strength, +1 in con, or a +2 somewhere and a +1 somewhere. You're also going to get dark vision. You're going to get vengeful assault. When you take damage, that's a key thing. When you take damage from a creature in range of a weapon you are wielding, you can use your reaction to make an attack with the weapon against that creature. Once you use this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a short or a long rest. So when you take damage, if you take damage and you have a weapon that you can reach your opponent, and it could be a sword and they're within 5 feet of you, or it could be a bow if you're within range of that weapon, and it does not include your Draconic Ancestry, your breath weapon. So you have to have a weapon in your hand, ready to go. And if you take damage, that's the key part right there. If you take damage, you can use a reaction to get off another shot at them. So those are the three types of Dragonborn that we can play. Now I will say that, you know, with these two down here, with the Forceful Presence and the Vengeful Assault, if you're playing in a campaign where a lot of it, you know, we talk about role play versus combat. If you're in a city situation where you've got a lot of role play going on, and you're in that type of situation, maybe a Dracon Blood will be a little bit better. Maybe this Forceful Presence will come in a little bit more handy. But if you're in a combat heavy campaign where combat is the main deal, the Vengeful Assault will probably come in handier. So you really want to try and talk to your DM about what kind of campaign you're going to be playing and what situations you're going to find yourself in on a normal basis. If you're playing in a 75% combat, 25% role play, basically the only role play you're doing is when you come back into town, you spend your gold, you get your next assignment, and you're back out on the road. You're going to want to stick with stuff that's probably more combat focused. So let's check out Dragonborn themselves. I'm always a big fan when you're thinking about developing a character of coming and looking at images, trying to find that image that is sparking what you're thinking of your character. And so coming to Google, Yahoo, whatever your search engine is, and putting in Dragonborn and then checking out images of it to give you an idea. So like this dragon right here, this is pretty typical as far as like coloration. So they're going to have that standard coloration, and this is going to be pretty close to what it is. But this dragon right here is obviously on the blue side. They're showing their Draconic Ancestry a little bit more directly towards the blue. This is a little bit more of a common. Looks like more of the sorcerer type. War mage. Definitely looks like they're a little more on the red. I like looking at these images. You can get a good idea, and you can type in, you know, we've got the bard. The deal with Dragonborn is that traditionally you've seen them in the fighter, paladin, barbarian, sorcerer, because we've got the Draconic Ancestry and sorcerer. And if you're playing a sorcerer with the Draconic, you do not have to pick the same Draconic Ancestry that you have in the game. Jeremy Crawford had some conversations about that, and so you do not have to pick the same one. You can pick a different. So if you're playing a sorcerer and you're playing that, you can have two. You can have you're a red, and then you've got some other for your sorcery side. Looking at the sorcerers, these are going to give you a little bit more of that sorcerer or cleric. I really like the idea of, with Tasha's opening up for our ability scores, we can play any race now in any class that we want, and really the only difference is putting those special abilities that you get with your race, that vengeful attack or that forceful presence. You can put those and work that out. Those are the things that you're looking at as far as like what your character concept is. But you can play any race now in any class, and you're going to get pretty much the same kind of stat stuff going on. Now, if you're playing in a very role-play rich environment, backstory becomes a much bigger deal. So it's always important to have a very good backstory, because it gives your DM an opportunity to tie stuff into the game and really kind of work that into it. But the more that your campaign is on the role-play side, the more your DM's going to be able to put those hooks in there. And also you're going to find that you may have one character that's really good at combat, and your character's really good when you get into town and you're doing the wheeling and dealing, and it gives your DM the opportunity to let other characters shine, and they can work that backstory into it. So doing some research on backstory, and I'm going to put links for all of these pages in the description of this video. So it's easy to assume that the Dragonborn is a monster, especially if his or her scales are of a chromatic heritage. Unless the Dragonborn starts breathing fire and causing destruction, though, people are likely to respond with caution rather than outright fear. It is not too uncommon to see black or a red dragonborn in a large city living productive lives, contributing to society and their clan. It is rare, but there are also dragonborn who are not part of a clan. So there are some clan structures that are in here, and to help your DM out, like if you want to play a dragonborn character and you are in one of those environments where backstory is going to be really important and really trying to develop that stuff, you can help your DM out. There's stuff that's already out there on Dragonborn clans. So if we talk about, I think this is the one. So there are 18 clans that have already been established, and each clan has something that it's like their focus. So in this clan right here with performance, it's typically blue and copper dragons. And so they're really focused on their clan. And so that clan is going to have a lot of training, and their work is on performance. The big thing with them, if I take, the big two, jewelry, weaponsmithing, and jewelry is a big deal to Dragonborn. Even though they're not dragons and they've tried to pull themselves away from their dragon heritage as far as any problems that the dragons have with each other, one thing that they have carried on racially is they have a love for jewelry, and they have a love for those shiny things. They tend to be more like dwarves, where they don't have stuff just for its artistic value. They have things that are useful, but they are drawn to jewelry. So if you're from a clan that creates jewelry, we could talk about, working rough stones, making the jewelry itself. There's a lot of things that you could work into your backstory here. I think with weaponsmithing or armor smithing, blacksmithing, any of those you can work into. If you think about in human society, let's talk about in the Middle Ages. At about somewhere between about 11 and 13 years old, you could go apprentice. If you could get accepted, you could apprentice with a blacksmith, armor smith, weaponsmith, and you were going to do a 7-year apprenticeship program. Now, depending on where you were at, this basically could be 7 years of indentured servitude. And there was no guarantee that you were going to make it through. But if you made it through those 7 years, you could petition the guild, and they would put you through tests, and they'd want to see product that you made, because the guild really performed quality control was one of their main things about guilds. There's good things and bad things about guilds, but the good thing is for the consumer, they tried to make the quality control good. And after 7 years, you could apply to become a master. So if you think about Dragonborn, at 3 years old, they're like a 10-year-old. And at 15, they're fully grown. They can get 12 years here. If they were in a clan that did any of these, whether it be jewelry or herbalism, weaponsmithing, weaving, in 12 years of learning from your clan, you could literally start your adventuring career at the age of 15 and be a master. And I think of the backstory where you and your cousin Olaf wanted to start your own forge in town, and you've got to that point where you're both at that master level, and you're going to go out adventuring to try and raise the capital, and your cousin's going to go into town and get established with the local guild, so that when you get enough money, you can come in and you can buy that forge and you can start that up. So there's lots of things that you can do with your backstory. If you can use something like this right here, because it'll give a little bit more structure, especially if your DM is world building. This will give them the opportunity to start off with something, and anything that you can do that helps your DM out and takes a little bit of weight off of their shoulders and gives them something like this is going to be helpful. Now, if you're looking at dragons and you don't know a lot about dragons in D&D and all of the different types of dragons that are out there, I'm going to put a link to the wiki here, but there's also some other chromatic and metallic dragons that aren't on that list. And maybe, if your DM is world building and they'll allow it, there are some other dragons that are out there that you could be more in line with, like the brown dragon or the gray dragon and the orange and the purple, yellow. As far as the metallic dragons, we have adamantine, cobalt, mercury, mithril, orium, steel. And there's other dragons that are out there too. So there's gem dragons, there's catastrophic dragons. There are some dragons that aren't even in the wiki here. We've got void dragons. There are some dragons that aren't in here, but there are a lot of different types of dragons that are out there. Lots. Let's talk about arts and leisure. So we talked a little bit about this as far as they're not interested in stuff just, you know, they don't want to have that tchotchke, that big bowl sitting on the thing that some master made so that everybody can look at it when they come over to your house. They have functional stuff. It's going to be that master leather work that you have, or that sword, or stuff that's on you that you're going to be using on a regular basis. And there's one section on here I wanted to read, because not all Dragonborn were sports were. Okay, here we go. Like the Dragonborn approach to art, the race's attitude towards leisure activities was very practical, and when Dragonborn weren't at work, they were often engaged in sports with a training component to them. Often competitive, these sports often lacked teams, with the most popular games ending in victory for one clear winner. Many of these sports were also violent, particularly by the standards of many other races, and wrestling was extremely popular with the race, as were, to a more limited extent, blood sports, such as gladiator games or pit fighting. So you can think of like any of the track and field sports, those types of sports, I can see them being really, really, really big in that. Not all Dragonborn sports were so physical, however, and the race was also fond of strategic board games, riddle contests, or improvised storytelling events. In all cases, the Dragonborn emphasis for recreation was on the triumph of the individual and the improvement of practical skills. So you really could come out with your backstory where you have 10, 12 years of experience in a craft, where you are a master. That pays the bills. I always like to think of adventuring, especially if you're playing in a role-play environment, where what we learned before we came adventuring is what pays the bills. And how we get ahead in life is by going out and adventuring. All right, that was a little bit on Dragonborn. A lot. I'd like, if you're playing just a straight up combat, most of the stuff that you're doing is combat, Dragonborn is going to be awesome. Because they're in that line. You get a weapon that comes with it. You get good stats as far as going to your ability scores. If you're playing where you've got more on the role-playing side, if you're playing in a city where you're going to have a lot more interactions, it's still a great character with that backstory. So I think you could come into it with a lot so that you could propel the story, and it gives your DM a lot of different hooks that they can do to move the story along and have a great time. All right, that was some on Dragonborn. Thanks for watching.